Hey everyone, and welcome back to Boss Economic World, the only show that decodes the matrix of money so you don't have to. Today is October 23, 2025, and let me tell you, the air in Washington D.C. is thick with more than just pumpkin spice lattes. It's thick with ambition, power plays, and the kind of high-stakes drama that makes a season finale of Succession look like a school bake sale. We're talking about the Federal Reserve, the temple of monetary policy, the institution that holds the keys to your mortgage rate, your car loan, and the overall health of your 401k. 4 months, everyone from Wall Street wizards to your Uncle Barry who just discovered stock trading has been waiting for the Fed to cut interest rates. Last month, they finally did it, a neat little quarter-point cut. But that's not the story. That's the B-plot. The real, juicy, A-plot, the story that has everyone on the edge of their seats, is the unfolding saga for who will be the next Fed chair. It's a contest we're calling the game of Fed chairs, and the front-runner is a man who is either a brilliant political tightrope walker or about to fall into a pit of economic crocodiles. His name is Christopher Waller. And you need to know who he is. So, picture this. You're Christopher Waller. You're a Fed governor, a former Ph.D. economist, basically a certified big brain. You're on President Trump's shortlist to take over the most powerful economic job on the planet when Jerome Powell's term ends next May. This is the big leagues. The Fed holds a meeting. Trump, who has never been shy about his feelings, wants rates slashed. He wants the economic equivalent of flooring the gas pedal. To make his point, his new appointee to the Fed, Stephen Miran, a man so close to the administration he probably has a White House parking pass, votes for a massive half percentage point cut. That's the political loyalty test right there, broadcast live on C-SPAN. So, what do you, Christopher Waller, do? Your potential future boss is watching. Do you signal your loyalty and go for the big cut to curry favor? Nope. Waller voted with the majority for the modest, widely expected quarter-point cut. To an outsider, this looks like a man deliberately snubbing his potential promoter. But to anyone watching the game of Fed chairs, this was a masterclass in political and economic positioning. He didn't cave to the overt political pressure. But he also didn't stand in the way of a cut. He's been advocating for cuts for months, just not the kind of light the fireworks and hope for the best cut that the president's wing was demanding. He even gave a little speech last week, a perfectly calibrated piece of central banker speak, saying, "We all understand we have to compromise somewhat in our positions to have a clear, consistent policy setting for markets and the American people." Translation: I'm a team player, but I'm the one who reads the playbook. I'm not just taking signals from the cheap seats. This single move tells you everything about Waller. He's a guy who has spent his career building a reputation as an independent, data-driven economist. A maverick. Friends and colleagues say he's not the type to sacrifice that hard-won reputation on the altar of ambition. But the question is, in the brutal political arena of 2025, can a man be both a maverick and the chosen one? Now, you might be thinking, okay, interesting political drama, but why does this matter to me? It matters because the single most important asset the U.S. economy has is the credibility of the Federal Reserve. For decades, the world has operated on the assumption that the Fed is an independent body of economists, shielded from the day-to-day political circus. It's like the designated driver of the economy. The politicians are the drunk friends in the back seat yelling, "Go faster. Let's hit the drive-thru. Run that red light." The Fed's job is to ignore them, keep their eyes on the road, and get everyone home safely. If markets, investors, and other countries start to believe the designated driver is taking shots of tequila with the rest of the car, they panic. President Trump's second term has seen an unprecedented campaign to challenge this independence. He's not just tweeting about it anymore. He's insulting Chairman Powell, he tried to fire Governor Lisa Cook in a legal battle that's now sitting at the Supreme Court, and he's appointing loyalists like Miran. His team is even exploring ways to exert control over the Fed's 12 regional banks. If this campaign succeeds, if the Fed becomes just another arm of the White House, the consequences could be catastrophic. The moment people believe the Fed is just printing money to help a president get re-elected, inflation expectations will skyrocket. If you think your supplier is going to raise prices by 10% next year, you'll raise your prices by 10% now. Workers will demand higher wages to keep up. It becomes a self-fulfilling, wage-price spiral that is incredibly painful to stop. The US dollar, the bedrock of the global financial system, could lose its status. The whole Jenga tower of the global economy could get seriously wobbly. This is the backdrop against which Waller is being considered. Is he the man who can defend the institution? Or is he the Trojan horse who will let the politicians inside the gates? Now, Waller's critics whisper that his recent calls for lower rates are just a cynical audition for the chair job. See, Mr. President? I like rate cuts too. But if you look at his track record, his economic receipts, if you will, it tells a more complicated, and frankly, more interesting story. Waller has a habit of making contrarian, out-of-consensus calls that later turn out to be right. Let's roll the tape. Greatest hit number 1, the tariff whisperer. For the last couple of years, Trump's tariffs have been a major economic talking point. Many economists fretted that these import taxes would fuel persistent inflation, forcing the Fed to keep rates higher for longer. Waller disagreed. He argued from a classic, textbook economics perspective, a tariff is a one-time shock to the price level, not a driver of ongoing inflation. Think of it this way, a tariff is like a one-time stupid tax on imported goods. Let's say a TV from overseas costs $500. A 20% tariff makes it $600. The price goes up once. You get angry, you might buy a different TV, but it doesn't mean the price will keep rising to $660 next month and $726 the month after. Waller argued the Fed should look through this one-time price bump and not overreact by jacking up interest rates. This view conveniently aligns with Trump's desire for lower rates, but it's rooted in a consistent economic theory he's held for years. It's a move that makes him look both intellectually consistent and politically palatable. That's a rare combo. Greatest hit number 2, the labor market prophet. This is where Waller really separated himself from the pack. Back in June of this year, while most of his colleagues were still cautiously watching the data, Waller stood up and said he was seeing growing signs of fragility in the job market. He became the first Fed official to publicly call for the Fed to resume cutting interest rates. At the July meeting, he was the lone dissenter, voting for a cut when the committee decided to hold steady. Days later? Vindication. The new jobs report dropped, and it was a dud. Let's say, hypothetically, payrolls came in at a measly 50,000, way below expectations, and the unemployment rate, which had been stubbornly low, ticked up from 3.8% to 4.2%. Suddenly, Waller didn't look like a dove, he looked like a hawk who could see over the horizon. He spotted the weakness before the official data screamed it from the rooftops. As Michael Farrelly, the chief U.S. economist at J.P. Morgan, put it, even if you disagree with his arguments, I think you recognize they're at least coherent. He's not just following the herd. Greatest hit number 3, the soft landing architect. Let's rewind even further. Back in 2022, inflation was raging at 40-year highs. The consensus view, from Wall Street to academia, was that the only way to kill that inflation was with a brutal recession. You had to jack up unemployment to crush demand. It was the Volcker playbook. Waller, almost alone among his peers, took serious heat for arguing that the Fed could bring inflation back to its 2% target without causing a massive spike in joblessness. He pointed to unique features of the post-pandemic labor market, like the high number of job openings. Well, here we are in late 2025. Inflation has come down dramatically, from over 9% to hovering around 2.5%, and we never had that deep, painful recession. The unemployment rate never shot up to 6% or 7% like many predicted. So far, Waller has been proven correct. This track record gives him immense credibility. He's not a political hack, he's a serious economist who's been right on some of the biggest calls of the last 5 years. And that credibility is his most powerful weapon in the game of Fed chairs. It's what allows him to call for rate cuts without being immediately dismissed as a Trump sycophant. So if he gets the job, what would a Chairman Waller Fed actually look like? People who know him say he would ferociously defend the Fed's independence on its core mission, monetary policy. But he is absolutely not a defender of the status quo. In fact, he might be the kind of reformer the Trump administration is looking for. There are 2 key areas to watch. 1. The end of mission creep. In recent years, the Fed, like many institutions, has waded into politically charged issues like climate change and social diversity initiatives. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is running the search for the next Fed chair, has explicitly criticized this mission creep, arguing it jeopardizes the Fed's independence by making it look like a political entity. Waller is deeply sympathetic to this view. Think of it like your plumber. You hire him to fix your pipes. He does a great job. But then he starts offering you unsolicited advice on your interior design, your choice of art, and your kid's school curriculum. At some point, you just want to say, dude, just fix the pipes. Waller wants the Fed to stick to fixing the pipes, stable prices and maximum employment. He has been openly skeptical of the Fed's role in climate-related financial risk. When the Fed recently withdrew proposed climate risk standards for banks, Waller's reaction was a blunt and telling, good riddance. This is music to the ears of Trump's team and other contenders for the job, like former Governor Kevin Warsh. 2. The lean, mean, money machine. Waller is also a hawk on efficiency. He's the chair of the committee that oversees the regional Fed banks, and he's already been pushing them to trim costs and streamline operations. In 2023, he oversaw a reduction of about 350 staffers across the system. He's a mission-based leader, as one former colleague put it. He believes the Fed has a job to do, and anything that doesn't directly support that job is waste. This aligns perfectly with Secretary Bessent's call for a comprehensive institutional review of the Federal. Waller could be the man to lead that review from the inside, a reformer who knows where the bodies are buried and how the plumbing works. He could offer the administration the Fed reform it wants, potentially as a trade-off for maintaining independence over interest rates. This brings us back to the central, billion-dollar question, can Waller walk this impossible tightrope? On one hand, he's publicly defended the Fed's independence. In a speech back in May, he warned that firing Fed officials would be terrible for the economy. In a July TV interview, he laid it out in no uncertain terms. He argued that if the administration picks a chair who lacks credibility as an inflation fighter, the result won't be the low interest rates the president wants. You're going to see inflation expectations spike, he said. You will not get lower interest rates. You will get higher interest rates. That was a direct message to the White House: if you pick a puppet, the markets will revolt, and your whole plan will backfire. You need someone they trust. Someone like me. He is positioning himself as the only sane choice. He's offering a grand bargain: I'll give you reform. I'll cut the institutional fat. I'll get the Fed out of the culture wars. And my economic framework happens to lead to lower rates right now. In return, you let me and my colleagues do our job on monetary policy without political interference. It's a brilliant, high-risk, high-reward strategy. He's trying to be the guy who can satisfy Trump's desire to shake things up, while also satisfying Wall Street's need for a steady, credible hand at the wheel. He's the maverick and the insider, the reformer and the defender, all rolled into one. The fate of the US economy, and by extension the global economy, could hinge on whether he can pull it off. Or whether, in the game of Fed chairs, you either win, or you get crushed by political pressure. This isn't just about one man's career. This is about the future of the institution that underpins our entire economic reality. It's a high-wire act over a pit of economic crocodiles, and the whole world is watching to see if he sticks the landing. We'll be here to cover every wobble. Until next time, keep your heads up and your wallets ready. This is Boss Economic World.